You're tuned in to the Bleav in Arizona podcast. Hello, Bear Down Believers, and welcome into the show. I'm your host, Matt Reynoldsson, and we can officially say it looks like football in Tucson, just 17 days away from kickoff of the season opener. We'll go through Tuesday's night practice over at Arizona Stadium coming up on the podcast. But first, I want to remind you to please like and subscribe to the show over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts at Bleav in Arizona, BLEAV, as well as my YouTube page at Matt_Reynoldsson. Click that download button on all the podcasts and give it a listen every time. We'll be doing these about 3 times a week, so we'll keep that rolling all the way through fall camp. Now, what we won't keep rolling through fall camp are practice reports, because from today forward, with Arizona switching into game week mode, media is no longer allowed to report what goes on the practice field. So whether it's before, during, or after practice, nothing from the practice field is leaving those gates of the Dick Tomey practice fields. So certainly interesting change going on over at Arizona Stadium, but we still have things from last night to report. And coming up later in this next week, or coming up over the next week or week and a half or so, I'll be going through my top 10 risers and my top 10 veterans of fall camp so far. But while we have this last opportunity, I want to go through what we saw on Tuesday night over at Arizona Stadium. Now, this was a lively practice. This was the most live tackling that the Wildcats have done all fall camp. We saw several heated red zone drills, great situations there, and then running backs trucking safeties, safeties sticking running backs and tight ends. Everybody fired up on both sides of the ball. Some animated discussions from Duane Akina, the defensive coordinator. A great post-practice press conference from Danny Gonzales. So we'll talk about it all podcast long here on the Bleav in Arizona podcast. Starting off with the quarterback situation. Noah Fifita is as good as we've seen him all camp. He has command in the red zone, seems to have a rhythm with the offense, threw a couple absolute darts, one to T-Mac, who had a nice day, but still wearing that red no contact jersey, and one to Roberto Miranda over the middle of the field. Noah has this offense so down pat that he is manipulating a secondary that could be the best secondary in the Big 12. And, with a lot of these situations so far in camp, we haven't seen a lot of physicality take shape. So we haven't seen exactly what, Noah needs to do to fit the ball in those tight windows when there is collisions between wide receivers and defensive backs. We haven't seen a lot of those really tight window throws to tight ends. We saw that quite a bit last night, and especially when it came to the red zone drills, lining up on the 3 or the 5 yard line, guys popping pads in there, the running backs needing to do their job, either getting across the goal line or going back in pass protection. And we saw a lot of it last night. Perhaps Fifita's most impressive play was when he ran a misdirection to the opposite side, fooled the entire defense, and then just lofted one to a wide open Tyler Powell, who had nobody within 15 yards of him in the opposite corner of the end zone. The eyes, the poise, the control of the huddle is what we've really seen from Fifita, and it's been very impressive to watch. Kendrick Riscano, the transfer from Ole Miss, the running back, had perhaps his best night of camp. He was thriving with the physicality that we saw back there from that Arizona running back room, and really up front, pounding through the holes. There was one time in the middle late portion of practice where he trucked Gunnar Maldonado, who was a returning starting safety for this Arizona team. So Riscano sending a message there, got the message returned to him a little later on. There was a lot of lively portions of last night's practice. One of those lively portions came from defensive coordinator Duane Akina, who I mentioned kind of laid into his defensive guys about halfway through those goal line drills. The defensive guys responded, and they played extremely well in team once they flipped the field to bring it back and go from goal line to the more extended part of the field. So kind of backed up against their own goal line. The defense started to tee off, and we saw a great defensive line rotation. Tai Uyunglele looks to have cemented himself as an absolute starter and a guy who's going to play a lot of snaps on this Arizona defensive line. We also saw guys like Chase Kennedy see a good amount of snaps. Chuba Mai continues to be the man in the middle as the only guy over 300 pounds on Arizona's defensive line. So we are seeing guys kind of rotate in. Even Lance Keneally had probably his best night of camp, saw him make a couple plays. But guys are rotating in on that defensive line, and we are seeing, some guys like Ty Ty and like Trace Smith, the San Jose State transfer, former All Mountain West player, uh, they are emerging as defensive ends, and they're going to be able to rotate a lot at D tackle and rotate a lot of these smaller guys in, so they're fresh when the snaps matter. Want to go over injuries? Jarrett Anderson, the Memphis transfer defensive lineman, was out last night. The boot and crutches on the sidelines, so his future remains a little bit unclear. We don't know how long he'll be out for. The linebacker position also got a little bit banged up. Jacob Manu looked to be walking a little bit gingerly, but stood on the sidelines for all of team periods. They said they held him out intentionally. Looks to be okay. Certainly didn't go down at all, but walking a little gingerly, so wouldn't be surprised if he's getting some treatment today and tomorrow on potentially a lower body injury for him. But he watched the linebackers kind of rotate in and needed a couple guys to take the spots of what could be your starters at inside linebacker. Kamuela Kayahue was also out. Kayahue is dealing with an ankle injury, is what Danny Gonzales told us after practice. So they were thin at linebacker, which led to Tay Brown, who was the preseason or the pre-camp projected starting inside linebacker opposite Jacob Manu, taking those first team reps with Leviticus Sua, who had perhaps his best day of camp. We got a chance to talk to them after practice and talk about why they were able to step up into these roles with Manu out and how the next man up mentality is driving this team through kind of the dog days of fall camp.
We just be ourselves. Yeah, at the end of the day, energy and passion, I feel like that's two traits that we really possess, and we just try to impress that on those around us and just make it contagious. 'Cause if one guy has energy and another guy gets it, then we all got energy, you know what I mean? Red line, that's the standard we hold for the team. So red line is really just giving it all you got at all times, 100%, 100% of the time.
Certainly encouraging to see some depth building at inside linebacker there. Another linebacker that had a nice night was Justin Flo. So Heem certainly playing his part as that hybrid defensive end outside linebacker role. Sterling Lane also could be a factor there. So really depth building at that linebacker position. Want to continue to go over injuries because, like I said, this is the last time we will be able to do this throughout the rest of fall camp because of new media restrictions. So Teteroa McMillan and Montana Lamonius Craig remaining in those red no contact jerseys. Those guys, along with the quarterbacks, are the only ones now on the offense that are wearing those red no contact jerseys. So something to watch there, but they look to be on track to get back to, full team workouts, full contact team workouts, and be ready for the opener on August 31st against New Mexico. Leif Magnuson, Josh Baker, and Wendell Moe, also the interior of the offensive line for Arizona, not practicing once again. Leif was working a little bit out on the side for the majority of practice, whereas Baker was doing individual drills but didn't participate in team drills. Moe told us last week that if there were a game, he'd be ready to play, but he's dealing with soft tissue injuries. So there continues to be concerns about the depth of Arizona's interior offensive line, or not the depth, I should say, but the starters dealing with some injuries on Arizona's offensive line. The depth issue is at tackle. We've seen Rhino Tapa'atotai really lock down that left tackle position. Jonah Savanaya at right tackle as well. But the depth behind them is a little bit scary. It's really Matthew Lotto, Zarius Wells, and who knows? You're going to have to cross-train guys to go out, kick out, and play tackle and do a lot of different things in that realm because otherwise, you're going to be way too thin at that tackle spot and just have your fingers crossed that a redshirt freshman at left tackle is ready for Big 12 play and your potential future pro prospect at right tackle just stays healthy all year long. So Jonah and Rhino are your bookends at tackle, but you need them to stay healthy and you need to get your interior of the offensive line healthy as well. The competition at tight end continues to be healthy. Kean Burnett looks to be just an absolute force this year, but Miranda has become that true downfield threat that you wanted from him, because before this year, he was really just a blocking tight end. Dorian Thomas has had a couple good practices. Tyler Powell has had a couple amazing practices. So we're seeing depth all over the place in the tight end room, depth all over the place in the wide receiver room. So looks like, as opposed outside really of the trenches, Arizona looks to be just fine depth-wise on offense. Cole Tannenbaum taking second-team reps at quarterback. We also saw Braden Dorman throw some nice balls. So the competition seems to be between those two, Tannenbaum and Dorman, for the number 2 quarterback behind Noah Fafita. Anthony Garcia made some nice plays, but he's still working in kind of that deep backup role, as is NAU transfer Adam DeMonte as well. Running backs looks to be the 3 transfers leading the pack there. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Quali Conley, and Kendrick Riscano leading the pack on that front. Injury-wise, otherwise, looks like guys are pretty healthy. I mentioned Kamuela Kaiahue, who is out with an ankle injury until next week. Manu looks to be okay. We'll see what his reps are like tomorrow. But it feels like Arizona has kind of avoided the big injuries maybe in fall camp. And again, knock on wood right now, but it feels like Arizona has avoided the big injuries, because you look all around the country at fall camp and you just cross your fingers that no impactful guys get hurt. And we've seen national title contenders so far in camp have really, really important guys be out for the season. So far, we haven't seen that, or we haven't been told that about Arizona fall camp. So certainly a good thing there. Before we transition into the next segment of our show, I want to discuss special teams a little bit, because it's a nice transition to our next segment, which is all about Danny Gonzales, the Wildcats special teams coordinator and linebackers coach. The former head coach of New Mexico is just a quote machine. So whether he had to say about special teams, about his linebackers, about the team as a whole, his quotes will get you fired up. So transitioning to that with a little special teams talk, the Wildcats seem fairly set at one position and becoming set at another position. Fairly set is a massive understatement at kicker. Arizona is going with Tyler Loop and has one of the most accurate kickers in all of college football. Maybe up for the Lou Groza Award as the best kicker in college football by the end of the year. Loop was setting historic marks last year before a somewhat rocky late season slump for him, but he was setting historic marks last year and just knocking through every ball that was put on the turf for him. I mean, he is an unbelievable kicker, has had a super consistent camp. Seems like every time they choose to end a period with a special teams play, it's Loop splitting the uprights. Made a 50-yarder easily last night. And Gonzales actually told us that he is consistently knocking through 65-yard field goals. So if it's a clean snap and a clean hold, number 33 is going to put it in. Tyler Loop, one of the best kickers in college football and a massive, massive weapon for the Wildcats. The punter situation seems to be working itself out. MSM, Michael Salgado Medina, looks to be pulling ahead of the pack at punter. And now it's not over. Jordan Forbes and Cash Peterman still in contention for that job. But Gonzales told us last night that MSM is really working his way to the front of this rotation. And we saw a lot of good punts last night. I mean, especially in those special teams periods, it felt like the guys were putting a good boot on the ball, which is not easy to do when you're staring up into the lights. And, it's night practice at Arizona Stadium. Kind of the pressure feels like it's coming in around you. The punters did not seem phased. And right now, Michael Salgado Medina is your starting punter if the first game were tomorrow. So special teams working itself out, returners kind of working themselves out too. We could see maybe Jeremiah Patterson on punt return. Could see maybe a Traden Stukes on punt return. Speedy Luke on kick return. That seems like a definite thing that we'll probably see. Rayshon back there is just going to be an electric force in special teams. So we'll see what Gonzales figures out there as far as special teams and what guys are going to play in what roles. Gonzales talked to us last night after practice, and it was electric. I can't overstate how fun this press conference was, because the guy talks like a head coach and just knows how to go. You give him a topic and he is going to wax poetic about it, give you 1,000 sound bites. As a former TV guy, I love everything he put out there last night into the microphone. And here was an interesting twist. He started with an opening statement for his post-practice press conference and had a lot of good things to say. Take a listen.
Outstanding. We're 11 days in now. we're making progress as a football team. This is a great opportunity to find out what kind of football team you're going to have through the next 5 days. We're going to have 6 practices in 7 days. So a ton of mental toughness can be built during this period. And as you saw, you guys were out there, I thought the offense did an outstanding job in the short yardage period. I thought the defense gained some momentum back in the next period. That's kind of what you want. You want at practice, you want a slugfest. One guy take a punch, another guy take a punch, and keep landing. And we've got a long way to go as a football team, but we have some time to get there. So I'll open up to whatever you guys want to talk about.
So we had to ask him some on-topic questions, of course, and Gonzales coaches the linebacker room, which was one of the big pieces of Tuesday night's camp practice, with Manu being out on the sidelines and Kayahue sidelined with an ankle injury for probably the next week. We got to see Tay Brown and Leviticus Sua step up at that inside linebacker spot, and really Arizona rotating more guys into there so they could figure out a way to build some depth behind Manu and Kayahue. Brown might still start over Kayahue, but building depth behind those two and those top 3 is really important right now for Arizona. So I took the question maybe a step further. And yeah, it's a next man up mentality for the linebacker room, but how does that translate to the entire roster? Because it feels like the coaching staff has been extra cautious in holding guys out for minor injuries during camp so they can keep this team healthy rolling all the way into week 1. I asked Danny Gonzales what the value was of that.
There's a lot of cliche things you hear about next man up, trying to figure out who that next man's going to be and who their teammates can trust. First they've got to earn trust by the coaches, but the coaches don't get to play, and we don't get to line up with those guys out there. So the guys that are standing next to them, they have to earn that respect in the locker room and know what to do and how to do it and proving that. And so right now we have an opportunity to work a bunch of guys in those things as we get closer to game week in the next – after we get through these next 4 practices and then we start turning it towards season, you're going to see a lot of those reps diminish. And when you have teams that have guys on their team that understand their role, they might not like their role, but they do it to a championship level, then you have a chance to be good. If you got guys that are selfish and they don't accept that, and it can become an issue down the road. I think we have a very unselfish football team. As you can see, it's impressive in this day and age, in the era we're in, that the football team that has stayed together. And so I think you got to build off that and get them to accept their roles. And I think we got a lot of kids that understand. I think you have to give Coach Fish credit. You go from 1 to 5 to 10. Those guys learn that process, and now they believe in it. And now it's our job to keep them going.
And of course, as I mentioned at the start of the show, Arizona had its most live tackling periods of fall camp in Tuesday night's practice at Arizona Stadium. So we asked Gonzales what he saw from the live tackling and what it can do for not just a defense, but an entire team getting used to the physicality and getting ready for week 1 when there's going to be no contact jerseys when New Mexico comes to town. And it's going to be all in the trenches, banging heads, getting ready to play some real football.
There's certain ones that you didn't see out there when we went live. That's for a reason, because we know they can play. If they haven't played in games, they need to play football. The only way you actually get better at doing something is doing it. And when we have our meetings and stuff, I want scrimmage as much as we can. That's a defensive guy talking that. I've been in that chair where you got to worry about your starting running back. You got to worry about T-Mac. You got to worry about getting too close to Noah. Getting worried about Jonah. All those guys that have played a ton of reps, you get a chance to develop some skill with younger guys or guys that you're expecting to be the next man up, like my class. So I think you need to scrimmage as much as you can, but you have to be smart now that we're getting close to 2 weeks out. That'll start to fizz out a little bit. We'll probably have one more big one and then let them heal up and be ready to play, because they should feel really good on August 31st. And the rest of the year, they should feel terrible. If they don't, then we got an issue and we're not very good.
Okay, I'm trying not to overdo this because Gonzales gave us just so many golden sound bites, a bunch of great information. Did confirm that Jacob Manu will be wearing the green dot helmet on defense, which means he will have the communication helmet, and either Gonzales or Dwayne Aquina will be speaking in his ear in pre-snap, so he knows what to look for. I believe the college football rule is that they cut it off at 15 seconds on the play clock, so Manu will be able to call out the signals and the plays to the defense, get the guys in their right set with help from the sideline, so that communication is fluid and continues to be ongoing. Manu, obviously, we're expecting back either tomorrow or sometime in the next couple days. The minor injury did not look to be at all serious that he suffered on Tuesday night. So there's something. And then he just gave us a lot of great nuggets about the special teams situation. I mentioned Tyler Loop kicking 65-yard field goals, mentioned Michael Salgado Medina being the starting punter as of right now. But here's the best part. On the final question of the press conference, which was about the punter, he started talking about, who has the edge in punting, who has the edge in holding for Loop, and then the roster overall. It just kind of evolved into his thoughts on how Arizona has a special roster. Just take a listen to the last part of what Danny Gonzales had to say.
If our football team, it's our job now to get them fresh, and Coach Carroll does an outstanding job with recovery, and that's as important as anything. You get them to August 31st feeling really, really good, and then they should feel terrible. And I enjoy it. That's why they play football. That's why they like running into people. They like doing those things. It's a physical, violent game, and if you have guys that hurt and they can fight through that adversity, you can be a good football team. And I know the city of Tucson expects this football team to compete for 16 games. Like I said earlier, give Coach his credit for starting to build that thing, and Coach Brendan's done a phenomenal job. But the football team that was here is what's going to give us a chance to compete. We're so far away from 16 games right now. We got a game on August 31st, and that's all we're talking about. That's all they know. Go 1-0 that week, work on whoever we play next. And if we can do that, we have a chance. And I think the linebacker room, I'm going to say it again, Jacob Manu is the best linebacker in the Big 12. And I proudly say that. And I will beat that, and I tell him, I'm putting a target on your back, man, because people are going to come and they want to prove that they're better than you. Let them prove it. Jacob Manu's earned that stuff. And he's got to be healthy for us to win a bunch of football games. He's one of the toughest kids I've ever been around. He's one of the biggest alpha males I've ever been around. He's fun to coach. And when you can coach those guys the hardest and get after them, you got a chance. And, I mean, I don't care who they are. They're going to do it right or they're not going to do it. If he doesn't do it right, then, I mean, it doesn't matter who they are. So I'm going to coach the tar out of him.
Okay, yeah, that was awesome. Thank you for the sound bites, Danny. We certainly appreciate it. That was a fun press conference to be a part of, and I was fired up. I was ready to get out on the field and start running an Oklahoma drill. Just excited to be around a coach with that kind of fire. And Arizona has 3 head coach type of guys on this staff. Obviously, Brent Brennan runs the show as Arizona's head coach, but Dino Babers is coming off being the head coach at Syracuse and talks like it. Danny Gonzales is coming off being the head coach at New Mexico and talks like it. These guys have so much knowledge, bring so much expertise into the room that I really see this coaching staff gelling extremely well together and really buoying Brent Brennan in his first Power 5 head coaching job, as well as this roster that just returns so many incredible pieces. So Arizona starts New Mexico preparations officially a week from today. So that's 10 days out of the season opener. They'll be in the final stages of fall camp mode over the next week, where guys start to pare down their reps a little bit, make one last push to being in the 2 deep, and then it's game preps from there. So certainly exciting time to be watching Arizona football. We'll take you all the way to that season opener and beyond. All right, as we wrap up the show, it's time now for the Bear Down Rundown, what we always do to wrap up the show, giving you a look at what else is going on in Arizona athletics. And boy, we've got a rivalry back on the basketball court. Arizona and UCLA renewing the old Pac-12 rivalry for several non-conference meetings over the next 5 or so years. Arizona and UCLA scheduling 3 dates, all at neutral sites. The 2024 game will be part of the Jerry Colangelo Hall of Fame Classic in Phoenix, down there at Footprint Center. That is December 14th. So mark your calendars. Ticket sales went on sale today, December 14th at Footprint Center, downtown Phoenix. It was a great event there last year when Arizona played and beat future Final Four team Alabama in Phoenix after kind of falling down really early in that game. Arizona and UCLA kind of reigniting the rivalry there, reigniting the best rivalry in the Pac-12 basketball, and just the 2 most historic programs from the Pac-12 now obviously, unfortunately, going to different leagues, but they'll continue to see each other every other year or so. Las Vegas will host the very next matchup. So 2 games within spitting distance of Wildcat Nation. And then we go to McHale West in Los Angeles for the 3rd meeting between these 2 foes. And it won't be at Pauley, or it won't be at, it won't be, at Pauley Pavilion in Westwood there. It will be instead in downtown Los Angeles. So a lot of things to iron out there, but kind of nice to see Arizona and UCLA coming together to keep this rivalry alive. Obviously, we saw Arizona's biggest comeback of the season come against UCLA last year at a game in January, in which Arizona really kind of put the final nail in the coffin of this UCLA rivalry. And then for more on that, went to Westwood, went to UCLA on the road, and wrapped up the Pac-12 regular season title there. So plenty of great moments for Bear Down Nation in this rivalry, and certainly excited to see Mick Cronin and Tommy Lloyd get together as coaching foes once again, and just see the jersey clash. I mean, the baby blue and gold versus the red and blue. I mean, it is just a beautiful jersey clash. It's a beautiful history clash. And we see the fabric of both of these true blue blood basketball programs going up against each other. And I know it'll be non-conference, so it won't feel the same. It won't be twice a year, but it'll certainly have the great big stage of these NBA arenas and these high caliber world-class arenas to showcase Arizona and UCLA, these 2 great programs. Certainly excited for basketball season, still waiting for the entire non-conference schedule to come out, as well as the dates and times of the Big 12 basketball schedule. That should be dropping here in the coming weeks, maybe sometime in September as well. We'll have a podcast covering that when that does come out. But for now, football continues to be the focus. Arizona back at practice tomorrow. We'll hear from Noah Fafita and quarterbacks coach Lyle Moivau, as well as others throughout the rest of the week of fall camp. And then, as I mentioned, a week from today, Arizona begins preps for game week against New Mexico, Saturday night, 7:30 p.m. kickoff at Arizona Stadium on August 31st for the season opener. It's coming. Get ready. It's football season time. Get excited, because I am. We'll talk to you later this week. For now, I'm Matt Reynoldson. Have a great day.